The moon hangs full over Pearl Harbor on the night of March 15, 1942. Inside the Pacific Fleet headquarters, Admiral Theodore Harrison stands before a map of the Pacific Ocean, staring at what looks like a constellation of red pins. Each pin represents a merchant ship. Each pin represents a coffin filled with American sailors. 247 pins. 247 ships sunk in the last 60 days. Harrison's hands shake as he counts them again, hoping the number will somehow be different. It is not. The math is brutal and unforgiving. At current kill rates, the United States Navy will run out of cargo ships before it runs out of war. A junior officer enters the room carrying another red pin. Harrison does not look at him. He already knows what the pin means. Another ship gone. Another 100 men drowned in the dark Pacific waters. Another telegram into another widow saying her husband died serving his country, as if that phrase could somehow fill the empty space at her dinner table. The officer places the pin on the map. Ship number 248. Harrison finally speaks. His voice is quiet, barely above a whisper, but it carries the weight of every single one of those pins. How many submarines did we sink last month? The officer checks his clipboard. One, sir, USS Gudgeon reported a confirmed kill on I-173 off Midway. 1. The word hangs in the air like a death sentence. Harrison does the math in his head. The Japanese are sinking American ships at a rate of 87-1. For every enemy submarine the Navy destroys, the enemy destroys 87 American vessels. This is not a battle. This is a massacre wearing the uniform of war. Get me every squadron commander in Coastal Air Patrol, Harrison says. I want them in this room at 0600 tomorrow. We are going to solve this problem or we are going to die trying. The officer salutes and leaves. Harrison remains alone with his map, with his pins, with his impossible mathematics. Somewhere out there in the darkness, Japanese submarines are surfacing to recharge their batteries, confident that night provides perfect protection. Somewhere out there, more American sailors are about to die, and Harrison has no idea how to stop it. 400 miles to the east aboard the USS Ranger, Lieutenant Commander Samuel Bradford climbs down from the cockpit of his PBY Catalina and removes his flight helmet. His hands are steady, his face expressionless, but inside he is screaming. Mission number 127. 0 kills. Bradford is 44 years old, which makes him ancient by Navy standards. Most pilots are fresh-faced boys of 22 or 23, eager and confident, and convinced they are immortal. Bradford knows better. He learned about mortality in the skies over France in 1917, flying reconnaissance missions for the Royal Flying Corps, while boys of his age died by the thousands in muddy trenches below. He came to America in 1920, became a citizen in 1925, and tried to forget about war. For 19 years he succeeded. Then Pearl Harbor happened and forgetting became impossible. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, climbs down after him. Webb is 26 tall and athletic, with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having failed at anything important. "Hell of a flight, Sam," Webb says, trying to sound cheerful. "That approach was textbook. If there had been a sub there, we would have nailed it." Bradford says nothing. He learned long ago that optimism is just another word for denial. They walk across the flight deck in silence. The night air is warm and humid, carrying the salt smell of the Pacific. Above them, stars fill the sky in patterns that Bradford has memorized over 1,500 hours of night patrols. He knows these waters, knows the winds, knows the currents. What he does not know is how to kill a submarine that can hear his engines from 2 miles away and dive beneath the surface in 45 seconds. In his quarters, Bradford opens his notebook. The pages are filled with calculations, diagrams, sketches of submarines in various stages of diving, every detail documented, every failure analyzed. He has flown 127 night patrols. He has made radar contact with the enemy submarines 43 times. He has achieved visual acquisition exactly 0 times. The problem is simple. The solution is not. Bradford picks up his pencil and writes, visual acquisition range equals 200 yards. Aircraft speed at attack altitude equals 120 knots equals 203 feet per second. Time from visual acquisition to weapons release equals 200 yards divided by 203 feet per second equals 29.5 seconds. Submarine emergency dive time equals 45 seconds. Attack window equals 29.5 minus 45 equals negative 15.5 seconds. He stares at the number, negative 15.5 seconds. This is not a tactical problem. This is a physics problem. By the time Bradford can see the submarine, mathematics has already declared the mission impossible. Webb appears in the doorway. "You coming to the officer's mess?" Jenkins is telling stories about that time he buzzed the admiral's yacht. "Not tonight," Bradford says. Webb glances at the notebook, sees the calculations, shakes his head. "Sam, you have got to stop torturing yourself with this. We are doing everything humanly possible." "That is the problem," Bradford says quietly. "Everything humanly possible is not enough." Webb leaves. Bradford returns to his calculations. There must be an answer. There must be some variable he has not considered, some approach he has not tried, some way to compress that negative 15.5 seconds into something survivable. He just has not found it yet. Somewhere in the darkness outside, a merchant ship is crossing the Pacific, carrying food, ammunition, fuel. Somewhere in that same darkness, a Japanese submarine is surfacing, its captain scanning the horizon through his periscope, his torpedo crew standing ready. Bradford picks up his pencil and starts calculating again. The memory comes to him unbidden, as it always does in the quiet hours before dawn. December 8th, 1941, San Diego, the day after Pearl Harbor. Bradford was sitting in his apartment, listening to the radio when the announcement came. The voice was calm and professional, reading names from a list as if he were announcing baseball scores instead of casualties. USS Arizona, 1,177 dead. One of those names was Ensign Michael Bradford, radar operator, 23 years old, body never recovered. Bradford's younger brother, Michael, who had joined the Navy straight out of high school because he wanted to see the world. Michael, who wrote letters home describing sunsets over the Pacific that made their mother cry with their beauty. Michael, who was supposed to be safe on a battleship in a harbor thousands of miles from any combat zone. Michael, who died because the Navy was not ready. Bradford turned off the radio. He walked to his closet and pulled out a box he had not opened in 23 years. Inside were his medals from the Great War, his Royal Flying Corps wings, his commission papers. He stared at them for a long time. Then he put on his jacket and drove to the Navy recruitment office. The officer behind the desk looked up when Bradford entered. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of crisp uniform that suggested he had never been closer to combat than a recruiting poster. "Can I help you, sir?" "I would like to enlist," Bradford said. The officer smiled. "Wonderful. We need men like you. How old are you, sir?" 43. The smile disappeared. "Sir, the age limit for enlistment is 35. You are 8 years too old. I am sorry." Bradford reached into his jacket and pulled out his Royal Flying Corps wings. He placed them on the desk. "I have 1,500 hours of flight time. I can navigate by stars, repair engines in the field, and land an aircraft on a carrier deck in zero visibility. The Navy needs pilots. I need to make the people who killed my brother pay for what they did." The officer stared at the wings. "Your brother, Ensign Michael Bradford, USS Arizona, radar operator. He was 23 years old. He was young enough to die. I am old enough to make it count." The officer was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a form and slid it across the desk. "Fill this out, sir. We will make an exception." Bradford picked up the pen. His hand did not shake. 3 months later, he was flying night patrols over the Pacific, hunting submarines he could not see, trying to prevent more families from receiving telegrams like the one his mother had opened with trembling hands. 3 months later, he had failed 127 times. The mission briefing happens at 0400 hours, which is military time for 4 in the morning, which is the hour when human beings are at their most exhausted and their least optimistic. Bradford stands in the ready room with 11 other pilots, all of them younger, all of them looking like they would rather be asleep. The briefing officer is a captain whose name Bradford has forgotten, though he has attended this same briefing 43 times. "Gentlemen," the captain says, pointing at a map, "intelligence indicates heavy submarine activity along the shipping lanes 200 miles west of Midway. Your mission is to patrol grid sectors 7 through 12 and engage any enemy contacts." One of the younger pilots raises his hand. "Sir, what is our success rate for night engagements?" The captain hesitates. 0.4%. The room goes silent. 0.4% is not a success rate. It is a rounding error. However, the captain continues quickly. Our radar technology continues to improve. The new ASV Mark III can detect a surfaced submarine from 12 miles away. With proper technique and a little luck, we should be able to close that gap. Bradford almost laughs. A little luck. As if luck has anything to do with physics. The briefing ends. The pilots file out toward their aircraft. Webb falls into step beside Bradford. 0.4%, Webb mutters. I have better odds playing poker against a card sharp. Poker has statistics, Bradford says. This is just mathematics telling us we are doing something wrong. So what is the right thing? Bradford does not answer because he does not know. They reach the Catalina. The aircraft is a graceless beast, all angles and rivets designed for endurance rather than beauty. But it is reliable, and in war reliability matters more than elegance. Bradford performs his pre-flight check with the same methodical precision he has used for 127 missions. Control surfaces, fuel levels, radio equipment, depth charges secured in the bomb bay. Every detail matters because in aviation, the details are what keep you alive. At 0430 hours, they take off into the darkness. The Pacific at night is a study in absolute black. No moon tonight, no stars visible through the cloud cover. Just the glow of the instrument panel and the steady drone of the engines and the vast emptiness of ocean stretching in all directions. Bradford flies at 100 feet low enough to stay below most radar, high enough to avoid the worst of the turbulence. Beside him, Webb monitors the radio. In the back, Ensign Bobby Chen hunches over the radar scope. Chen is 19 years old. This is his first combat mission. They have been airborne for 3 hours when Chen's voice crackles over the intercom. Contact. Bearing 075. Range 11 miles. Strong return. Bradford feels his pulse quicken. 11 miles. Close enough. Confirmed submarine, Bradford asks. Chen's voice is uncertain. Size and speed match known profiles. Confidence 90%. 90%. Good enough. Bradford banks toward the contact and begins his descent. This is the delicate part, the part where precision matters more than courage. Too fast and the submarine will hear the engines. Too slow and they will run out of darkness before reaching attack range. He throttles back. The engine noise drops to a low rumble. Airspeed decreases to 110 knots. Altitude decreases to 80 feet. Range 8 miles, Chen calls. Bradford adjusts course 2 degrees. Perfect intercept. Range 5 miles. The tension in the cockpit is thick enough to touch. Webb's hand hovers over the depth charge release. Bradford's eyes strain against the darkness, searching for any hint of the target. Range 2 miles. Still nothing visible. Just blackness and the faint phosphorescence of wave tops. Range 1 mile, contact is strong. Should be visual in 30 seconds. Bradford's hands are steady on the controls, but his mind is racing through calculations. 1 mile equals 59 seconds at current speed. Submarine dive time is 45 seconds. If the enemy crew hears them now, they are already too late. Flares, Bradford says. Webb pulls the release. A parachute flare ignites and tumbles from the aircraft, trailing white fire. Bradford counts in his head. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The flare's parachute deploys. The burning magnesium drifts slowly downward, caught by the wind, moving 200 yards to the left of their flight path. 8 seconds. The flare reaches full brightness, 40,000 candle power of chemical fire, lighting the ocean below. 8.5 seconds. Somewhere beneath them, a Japanese lookout spots the flare and sounds the alarm. Bradford sees nothing. The flare has drifted too far off target, illuminating empty water, while the submarine sits in darkness, already beginning its emergency dive. 18 seconds. The submarine's conning tower slips beneath the surface. 23 seconds. Bradford reaches the attack position. He can see the flare now burning bright against the black water, but there is no submarine in the circle of light. Just waves and more waves and the mocking emptiness of the Pacific. Drop charges, Bradford says. Knowing it is futile, Webb releases the depth charges anyway. 4 Mark 17 charges tumble into the darkness, detonating 30 seconds later in perfect sequence. They are 50 yards behind where the submarine used to be. Bradford banks away from the kill zone and climbs back to patrol altitude. In the back, Chen is quiet. Webb stares out the window. Nobody speaks because there is nothing to say. Mission 128, 0 kills. They patrol for another 4 hours detecting nothing, seeing nothing, accomplishing nothing. At 0900 hours low on fuel, Bradford turns back toward the Ranger. The flight home takes 90 minutes. Bradford spends the entire time running calculations in his head, searching for the variable he is missing, the factor that will make the mathematics work. He finds nothing. They land at 10:30. Bradford fills out his mission report in the same careful handwriting he has used for 128 consecutive failures. Enemy contact at 007:15 hours. Flare deployed. Visual acquisition negative. Attack unsuccessful. Probable damage none. He signs the report and files it with the duty officer, who will add it to a pile of identical reports that will eventually be summarized in a document that will tell Admiral Harrison exactly what he already knows. The American Navy is losing the Pacific War, one merchant ship at a time, and nobody knows how to stop it. Bradford goes to his quarters. He does not eat lunch. He opens his notebook and writes down everything he can remember about the mission. Flare deployment time, drift distance, wind speed, illumination intensity, every data point documented. Then he stares at the numbers and tries to find a pattern. Webb appears in the doorway again. "Sam, you missed lunch." Jenkins actually had a pretty good story about that time in Manila when he accidentally landed at the wrong airfield and taxied right into a general's staff car. Bradford does not look up from his notebook. "Marcus, do you know what the problem is with flares?" Webb sighs. "Sam, they burn for 30 seconds. 30 seconds is 29.5 seconds too long. By the time a flare reaches full brightness, the submarine has already heard us and started diving. The illumination is irrelevant because the target is gone." "So what is the solution?" Bradford taps his pencil against the notebook. "I do not know yet, but it has something to do with time." Webb leaves. Bradford returns to his calculations. There must be an answer hidden somewhere in these numbers. There must be a way to compress time to create light without warning, to freeze the enemy submarine in a moment of perfect vulnerability. He just cannot see it yet. 3 weeks later, Bradford is flying another night patrol, mission 139. The routine has become almost meditative. Take off, fly the search pattern, wait for radar contact, make the approach, drop the flare, watch it drift away from the target, drop the charges into empty water, return to base, file the report, repeat. Tonight is different. At 2300 hours, Chen picks up a contact. Bradford begins his approach, throttling back, descending through the darkness toward an enemy he cannot see. But tonight there is something else. At half a mile from the target, Bradford spots a light on the water. Not a flare, not a military vessel. A fishing boat, probably Japanese, running with its navigation lights on in violation of every blackout regulation. The fishing boat's spotlight sweeps across the water, a bright beam cutting through the darkness, searching for nets or buoys or whatever it is that fishermen search for at midnight in a war zone. For exactly 3 seconds, the spotlight beam crosses the position where the submarine should be. In those 3 seconds, Bradford sees everything. The conning tower, black metal gleaming wet. The deck crew moving like shadows. The white phosphorescent wake spreading behind the submarine's hull. The exact angle of the vessel relative to his approach vector. 3 seconds of perfect clarity. 3 seconds of God-level illumination showing him every detail he needs for a successful attack. Then the fishing boat turns. The spotlight sweeps away. Darkness returns. By the time Bradford reaches the attack position, the submarine has dived. He drops his depth charges into empty water and banks away, but his mind is no longer on the mission. His mind is on those 3 seconds. Back at base, Bradford does not file his report immediately. Instead, he goes to his quarters and opens his notebook to a fresh page. He writes, "The problem is not the power source. The problem is duration." Flares burn for 30 seconds, long enough for the enemy to react, dive, escape. But that fishing boat's spotlight burned for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough to see everything. The wake, the dive angle, the exact position. What if he could create 3 seconds of artificial daylight? Not a slow burning flare falling from the sky, but an instant sun erupting from beneath the aircraft, freezing the submarine crew in perfect illumination before they could even reach the hatch. And Bradford starts sketching. a powerful searchlight mounted in a retractable housing beneath the aircraft, aimed downward, controlled from the cockpit, activated at the last possible second, giving the enemy zero time to react. He draws diagrams showing the housing mechanism, the power requirements, the beam angle. His hand moves faster as the idea takes shape on the paper. The engineering challenges are enormous. Aircraft generators cannot power a searchlight strong enough to illuminate a target from 100 feet. The weight would make the plane unflyable. The battery pack required would fill the entire bomb bay. But Bradford is not thinking about challenges. He is thinking about those 3 seconds. 3 seconds of light that showed him exactly what he needed to see. 3 seconds is all he needs. At 0200 hours, Bradford leaves his quarters and walks across the base to maintenance hangar number 3. The hangar is supposed to be locked, but Bradford has the key because he has been conducting unauthorized repairs on the squadron's aircraft for the past 6 months, and the maintenance chief trusts him. Inside the hangar, rows of aircraft sit in various stages of repair. Tool benches line the walls, parts bins overflow with salvaged equipment, and in the corner behind a tarp sits a pile of surplus electrical components that nobody has bothered to catalog. Bradford starts digging. He finds car headlights, aircraft landing lights, signal lamps from a destroyer, a battleship searchlight salvaged from USS Nevada after Pearl Harbor. He carries everything to a workbench and begins sketching connection diagrams. The chief mechanic finds him at 0600 hours, surrounded by wires and batteries and half-assembled prototypes. "Commander Bradford, sir, what in the hell are you doing with those car headlights?" Bradford looks up. His eyes are red from lack of sleep. His hands are covered in grease, but his voice is perfectly calm. "Something stupid," he says. "Or brilliant. I will know in 3 months." The mechanic stares at the mess on the workbench. Does the Admiral know about this? No. Should he? Bradford picks up a car headlight and examines the reflector. Probably not, at least not until I know if it works. The mechanic shakes his head and walks away. Bradford returns to his sketches. He knows this is illegal. Naval regulations clearly prohibit unauthorized modifications to aircraft. He knows this is dangerous. Working with high-voltage electricity without proper training kills people. He knows this could end his career. If the Admiral discovers what he is doing, court-martial is almost certain. But he also knows that 247 red pins are stuck in Admiral Morrison's map, and every day that number grows larger, and every night submarines surface in the darkness, with perfect confidence that they are invisible. And every calculation Bradford has run proves that current tactics cannot solve the problem. So he will solve it himself, or he will fail trying. Over the next 4 months, Bradford becomes a ghost. By day, he flies his assigned patrols, maintaining his perfect record of professional mediocrity. By night, he works in Hangar 3, testing increasingly powerful configurations of lights and batteries and homemade electrical systems. Prototype 1 is 4 car headlights wired in parallel. Output 8,000 candle power. Bradford mounts them on a wooden frame and tests them from the hangar roof. The light is bright enough to read a newspaper at 50 yards. It is not bright enough to illuminate a submarine from 100 feet. Prototype 2 is an aircraft landing light with a custom reflector. Output 45,000 candle power. The beam is intense enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. But when Bradford tests it by shining it at the harbor from the hangar, the light dissipates before reaching the water. Wrong beam angle. Prototype 3 is the battleship searchlight from Nevada. Output 22 million candle power. Bradford connects it to the hangar's electrical system and points it at the harbor. When he throws the switch, night becomes day. The beam cuts through darkness like a physical thing, illuminating fishing boats half a mile away in perfect detail. Sailors on those boats look up in confusion, wondering why someone is shining the sun at them at 3 in the morning. Bradford measures the distance. 800 yards. Clear illumination. Perfect visibility. This is it. This is the answer. There is only one problem. The searchlight draws 500 amps of power. A PBY Catalina's generator produces 200 amps maximum. Connecting this searchlight to the aircraft's electrical system would melt every wire blow, every fuse, and probably catch the plane on fire. Bradford sits on the hangar floor surrounded by cables and calculations and tries to solve an impossible equation. How do you power a 500 amp searchlight using a 200 amp generator? The answer comes to him at 4 in the morning. You do not use the generator at all. You build a battery pack. A massive battery pack. 800 pounds of naval storage batteries connected in series mounted in the bomb bay, wired directly to the searchlight. 3 seconds of activation time, just enough power for one attack run before the batteries overheat. 3 seconds. That is all he needs. Bradford starts building. He salvages batteries from damaged aircraft machines, housing solders connections. The work is painstaking and dangerous and completely unauthorized. He is halfway finished when Commander Douglas Whitmore walks into the hangar. Whitmore is 48 years old, MAT, trained into the Navy's chief electrical engineer. He designed the ASV radar system currently installed on every patrol aircraft in the Pacific. His career is built on methodical, by-the-book engineering. He does not improvise. He does not experiment. He follows specifications. He takes one look at Bradford's workbench and his face turns red. "Lieutenant Commander Bradford, what is this?" Bradford stands at attention. "Sir, this is a searchlight mounting system for anti-submarine operations." Whitmore walks to the workbench. He examines the battery pack, the wiring diagram, the searchlight housing. His hands shake as he reads the specifications. This device violates Naval Electrical Code Section 7.4.2 regarding unauthorized power systems exceeding 200 amps. It violates weight distribution protocol. 800 pounds of batteries in the bomb bay will shift your center of gravity and make your aircraft unstable. It violates common sense because even if you do not crash, this searchlight will blind your own bombardier at the exact moment he needs to see the target. Bradford says nothing. "This is the stupidest thing I have seen in 25 years of naval engineering." Whitmore continues, "You are unauthorized to modify aircraft. You are destroying Navy property. You are creating a fire hazard that could kill your entire crew. I should recommend immediate court-martial." Bradford meets Whitmore's eyes. "Sir, with respect, I have documented 7 failed prototypes over the past 4 months. Each failure taught me something. The current design solves the night attack problem that has cost us 247 ships since February. I request permission to conduct one field test." "Permission denied. You will dismantle this equipment immediately or I will file charges for destruction of Navy property, misuse of materials during wartime, and conduct unbecoming an officer. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, sir." Whitmore turns and walks out of the hangar. Bradford stands alone with his searchlight, with his batteries, with his impossible dream. Webb appears from behind a tool rack where he has been watching the entire confrontation. "Sam, he is right. You are going to get court-martialed." Bradford looks at his searchlight. 800 pounds of batteries, 22 million candle power, 3 seconds of God pressing a light switch. "Then we had better make sure it works before he files those charges." Webb stares at him. "You are going to test it anyway. Tonight." "Sam, that is insane. If this thing does not work, your career is over." "If it does not work," Bradford says quietly, "my career does not matter. What matters is that I tried." At 2200 hours, Bradford files a flight plan listing the mission as routine maintenance test. He signs out a Catalina has the ground crew fuel it and personally supervises the installation of his searchlight system into the bomb bay. The housing weighs 830 pounds, including the battery pack. It hangs beneath the aircraft like a tumor, ugly and asymmetric, and completely outside every regulation in the Navy handbook. Webb climbs aboard because he is loyal, even when loyalty is stupid. Chen climbs aboard because he does not know enough to be afraid. They take off at 2230 hours. Bradford flies west away from the normal patrol routes into waters where submarines operate with impunity because American aircraft never venture this far from base. At 2347 hours, Chen picks up a contact. Japanese submarine, range 14 miles, running on the surface, recharging batteries. Bradford begins his approach. Everything he has calculated, everything he has built, everything he has risked comes down to the next 5 minutes. He throttles back, descends to 80 feet, adjusts course to intercept. "Range 10 miles, Chen calls. Bradford's hand moves to the searchlight activation switch. The switch he installed himself. The switch connected to 800 pounds of unauthorized batteries. The switch that will either prove his theory or end his career. Range 5 miles. The submarine is running on the surface, confident in the darkness, completely unaware that physics is about to betray it. Range 2 miles. Bradford can see nothing. Just the endless black of the Pacific. Range 800 yards. 600. 400. Still nothing. 200 yards. Sir, we should be visual. Bradford's finger hovers over the switch. Every instinct screams at him to activate now, to see what he is attacking, to trust the light. But he trusts the mathematics more. 100 yards. 70. 50. Bradford flips the switch. 22 million candle power erupts from beneath the Catalina. Night becomes noon. The Pacific Ocean becomes a stage perfectly lit, every detail razor sharp. And there, frozen in absolute clarity, is the Japanese submarine I-26. Deck crew scrambling, officers diving for the hatch, wake spreading white behind the hull. The submarine's identification number painted on the conning tower. Bradford can see the expression on the lookout's face. Shock, terror, the pure animal fear of prey caught in a predator's spotlight. Target acquired! Chen screams. Webb releases the depth charges. 4 Mark 17 charges tumble into the light. 3 seconds later, Bradford kills the switch. Darkness returns. He banks hard, right climbing, already turning for home. Behind them, the depth charges detonate 20 feet from the submarine's pressure hull. Not a direct kill, but close enough. Radio intercepts later confirmed that I-26 was crippled, unable to dive, forced to limp back to port for repairs. The submarine never returns to combat. Bradford lands at 03:40 hours. He does not speak to anyone. He walks directly to Admiral Harrison's office and leaves an envelope on the desk. Inside is a letter written in Bradford's careful handwriting. Admiral Harrison. At 22:53 hours on May 16, 1942, I conducted an unauthorized test of a searchlight device designed to solve the night submarine attack problem. The device functioned as predicted and enabled successful engagement of enemy submarine at 26. I accept full responsibility for violating naval regulations and request opportunity to present findings we have before facing disciplinary action. Respectfully, Lieutenant Commander Samuel Bradford. Bradford seals the envelope and walks back to his quarters. He has done everything he can. He has broken every rule, risked everything, proven his theory works. Now he waits to discover whether the Navy will court-martial him for being right. At 0800 hours the next morning, an orderly knocks on Bradford's door. Sir Admiral Harrison requests your presence in Conference Room A immediately. Bradford puts on his dress uniform. He has been through enough military bureaucracy to know what immediately means. He is about to be either promoted or court-martialed, and the dress uniform works equally well for both. Conference Room A is full of people who look very serious and very unhappy. Admiral Harrison sits at the head of the table. Commander Whitmore sits to his right, holding a folder thick with documentation. A JAG officer sits to the left, ready to discuss articles and regulations and the many ways Bradford has violated them. Bradford enters, stands at attention, and waits for his career to end. Harrison opens Bradford's letter and reads it aloud to the room. When he finishes, he looks up. Commander Bradford, you violated 3 separate naval regulations last night. You installed unauthorized equipment. You filed a false flight plan. You endangered your crew without approval. Commander Whitmore has prepared a very thorough list of charges. Would you like to hear them? No, sir. No, well. Sir, with respect, I know what I did wrong. What I would like is permission to explain why I did it. Harrison nods. Proceed. Bradford takes a breath. Sir, I have flown 139 night patrols. I have made radar contact with enemy submarines 43 times. I have achieved visual acquisition 0 times. The mathematics prove that current tactics cannot solve this problem. Flares provide 30 seconds of illumination, which gives the enemy 18 seconds to dive. By the time we reach attack position, the target is gone. 0.4% success rate is not a tactic. It is statistical noise. So you built a searchlight. I built a solution, sir. 3 seconds of instant illumination activated at 50 yards gives the enemy 0 reaction time. No warning, no escape, just light and depth charges, and a submarine that cannot dive fast enough to survive. Whitmore interrupts. Admiral, with respect, Commander Bradford is describing a device that violates every electrical safety standard in the Navy. 800 pounds of batteries pulling 500 amps creates a massive fire risk. If that housing fails, his entire crew dies. But does it work? Harrison asks. Whitmore hesitates. Physically, yes. The mathematics are sound. Legally, absolutely not. Strategically, he pauses. It could change the war. Harrison stands. Every other officer in the room immediately stands as well, following the unwritten rule that when an admiral stands, everyone stands. Gentlemen, Harrison says, I'm going to tell you a story. On December 7th, 1941, my son Thomas was serving as radar operator aboard USS Arizona. At 07:53 hours, he detected incoming aircraft and reported a large flight bearing 005. His commanding officer told him it was probably American B-17S from the mainland. 6 minutes later, a torpedo struck Arizona's forward magazine. Thomas was below decks when the ship exploded. He was 21 years old. The room is absolutely silent. I have read every after-action report from Pearl Harbor. Harrison continues. My son did his job perfectly. He detected the threat 12 minutes before the attack. But nobody listened because his data did not fit our expectations. Now we have radar that can detect submarines from 12 miles away, but we cannot kill them because our doctrine says night attacks are impossible. Well, gentlemen, I am done listening to doctrine that gets my sailors killed. He turns to Whitmore. Commander, if we installed Bradford's device on every Catalina in the Pacific Fleet, would it increase our kill rate? Whitmore looks at Bradford, then back at Harrison. Yes, sir, potentially by a factor of 10 or more. Then here is my decision. Commander Bradford, you are promoted to full commander and assigned to lead Project Midnight Sun, a classified development program to weaponize your searchlight. Commander Whitmore, you are assigned as technical director. I need your engineering expertise to make this production ready. You have 6 weeks to equip 30 aircraft. Dismissed. The room empties. Bradford and Whitmore are left standing alone in the conference room, enemies forced into partnership by an admiral's order. Whitmore speaks first. You know we cannot do this in 6 weeks. Manufacturing 30 battery packs requires copper wiring we do not have access to during wartime rationing. Then we find another way, Bradford says. Or we fail together. Whitmore looks at him for a long moment. If we fail, I am blaming you. Bradford extends his hand. Deal. Whitmore shakes it. The grip is firm, professional, completely lacking in warmth. But it is a beginning. The conference room at Naval Air Station North Island smells like coffee and tension. 6 weeks. Harrison has given them 6 weeks to turn an illegal prototype into a production weapon system. Bradford sits across from Whitmore at a steel table covered in blueprints, and the silence between them is thick enough to cut. Whitmore speaks first. His voice is cold, professional, completely devoid of the rage that was there yesterday. Your housing design will rip off the aircraft at 120 knots. The aerodynamic drag coefficient is catastrophic. Bradford slides a sketch across the table. Then we need a streamlined fairing. Whitmore studies the sketch for 30 seconds. Then he picks up a pencil and starts drawing. His hand moves with the precision of someone who has spent 25 years turning ideas into metal and wire. 3 hours later, he slides the revised design back to Bradford. This will work, Whitmore says, but it adds another 200 pounds. Can the Catalina handle it? Barely. Bradford nods. Barely is good enough. They work through the night. By dawn, they have a complete schematic for the housing mechanism. By noon, the machine shop has started fabricating the first prototype. By evening, Whitmore is running stress calculations while Bradford tests the retraction system. They do not become friends, but they stop being enemies. The copper shortage arrives on day 8. Bradford is in the fabrication shop when the supply officer appears with a clipboard and bad news. Commander, we have a problem. Copper wiring allocation for this quarter has already been assigned to radar manufacturing. I cannot authorize additional material without approval from Washington. How long will that take? 6 to 8 weeks, maybe longer. Bradford does the math in his head. They have 28 days left. 6 weeks means failure. Failure means more red pins on Harrison's map, more telegrams, more families destroyed. What about aluminum? Bradford asks. The supply officer blinks. Sir, aluminum wiring has higher resistance. It will overheat under load. Not if we limit activation to 3 seconds and add cooling fins. The supply officer looks doubtful but writes down the request. Bradford finds Whitmore in the engineering office, shows him the problem. Whitmore runs calculations for an hour. When he looks up, his expression is grim. Aluminum will work for 3-second bursts if we double the wire gauge and add a heat sink. But if anyone leaves the light on for more than 5 seconds, the wiring will melt and the battery pack will catch fire. So we make it impossible to leave on for more than 5 seconds. Install an automatic cutoff. Whitmore nods slowly. That could work. They redesign the electrical system. 3 days lost, but the problem is solved. On day 15, they test the first production unit. The Catalina sits on the tarmac at 0600 hours. Ground crew has installed the searchlight housing overnight. The morning sun turns the aircraft's metal skin gold, and Bradford can see his reflection in the polished aluminum fairing. Beautiful engineering. Whitmore's design is elegant, efficient, perfect. Bradford climbs into the cockpit. Whitmore stands on the tarmac with a fire extinguisher, which tells you everything you need to know about his confidence level. Ready, what Bradford calls. Ready, Whitmore replies. Bradford flips the activation switch. The explosion is not large, just a sharp crack and a flash of orange flame from the bomb bay. But it is enough. The battery pack has failed catastrophically, melting through its housing and igniting hydraulic fluid. Ground crew swarms the aircraft with extinguishers. The fire dies quickly. The damage is contained. Nobody is hurt, but the test is a complete failure. Bradford climbs down from the cockpit. Whitmore is already examining the wreckage, his hands black with soot. The battery connectors failed. They are not rated for 500 amps. Can we get higher rated connectors? Not in the timeline we have. Standard Navy connectors max out at 300 amps. Anything stronger would need to be custom fabricated. Bradford stares at the burned housing. 15 days gone. 15 days remaining. They are halfway through the deadline with 0 functional units. He thinks about giving up. He thinks about walking into Harrison's office and saying the project is impossible, the timeline is unrealistic, the engineering challenges are insurmountable. Then he thinks about Michael, 23 years old, radar operator, USS Arizona. What about submarine battery connectors? Bradford asks. Whitmore looks up. What? Submarines run massive electrical systems. Their battery connectors must be rated for high amperage. Probably 800 amps or more, but where are we going to find submarine parts in 15 days? Bradford is quiet for a moment. Then he says the words that will cost him more than he knows. USS Arizona. She is still in Pearl Harbor, partially salvaged. Whitmore understands immediately. He knows about Michael. Everyone knows about Michael. Sam, you do not have to do this. Yes, Bradford says quietly. I do. And they fly to Pearl Harbor the next day. The harbor is still a graveyard. 200 days after the attack, Arizona sits on the bottom with her superstructure visible above the waterline. Oil still leaks from her ruptured tanks, creating rainbow patterns on the surface. The smell of fuel hangs in the air like a memory. Bradford stands on the deck of the salvage ship and stares at the wreck. This is where his brother died. This twisted metal, this burned steel, this tomb holding 1,177 bodies. The dive master hands him a weight belt. You sure about this, Commander? We have professional divers who can retrieve the parts. I am sure. Bradford puts on the diving suit, the weight belt, the helmet. The air hose connects to the surface compressor with a hiss of pressure. Then he steps off the platform and descends into the oil-slicked water. The visibility is terrible, 3 feet at most. Bradford follows the guide rope down through the murk, his gloved hands pulling him deeper into the darkness. At 40 feet, he reaches the Arizona's deck. The ship is a graveyard, burned metal everywhere, twisted railings, shattered equipment, and silence. The kind of silence that happens when 1,177 people die in 6 minutes. Bradford makes his way aft, following the salvage team's map. The battery compartment is near where Michael's radar station used to be. He tries not to think about that. He tries to focus on the mission. But when he reaches the compartment, when he sees the massive battery connectors still attached to their terminals, something breaks inside him. These connectors powered the ship that his brother served on. These connectors were functioning when the torpedo struck. These connectors survived when Michael did not. Bradford removes the connectors with hands that shake inside the diving gloves. 4 connectors, each one weighing 10 pounds, each one salvaged from his brother's grave. He surfaces 20 minutes later. Whitmore is waiting on the salvage ship. He takes the connectors without speaking, because some moments do not need words. That night, Bradford sits alone in his quarters. The weight of what he has done settles on him like a physical thing. He has desecrated his brother's grave for spare parts. He has turned Michael's tomb into a supply depot. But the alternative is watching more brothers die because he was not willing to do what was necessary. Bradford does not cry. He sits in the darkness and calculates. 28 days until deadline. 15 days remaining. 400 connectors still needed. 400 more dives into his brother's grave. The mathematics are brutal, but the mathematics do not lie. The connectors work perfectly. Day 22, 8 days remaining. The production team installs the Arizona connectors on the second prototype. Ground test at 1400 hours. Bradford flips the switch. 22 million candle power erupts from the housing. The light stays on for 3 seconds. The automatic cutoff engages. No fire, no explosion, no failure. Whitmore checks the battery temperature. Within acceptable range, connectors held. Bradford allows himself the smallest smile. We have a working system. They build the remaining 29 units in 7 days. It should be impossible, but the entire base has heard about the project now, and volunteers appear from everywhere. Machinists working double shifts. Electricians wiring battery packs at 0300 hours. Sheet metal workers fabricating housings through the night. On day 28, the 30th unit is completed. Harrison inspects the line of modified Catalinas personally. 30 aircraft, 30 searchlight systems, 30 weapons that violate every regulation in the Navy handbook. Outstanding work, gentlemen, Harrison says. Now we need pilots. Bradford has been thinking about this. 30 aircraft means 30 crews, means 90 men who will fly an experimental weapon system into combat. The wrong pilots will waste the technology. The wrong pilots will die. He needs someone who understands mathematics, someone who studies the enemy, someone who has been underestimated and wants to prove the world wrong. He needs someone like himself. I will train them personally, sir, Bradford says, and I know who should fly the first combat mission. The briefing room is packed. 60 pilots, all of them veterans, all of them with combat experience and strong opinions. They have heard rumors about Bradford's illegal searchlight. Half of them think it is genius. The other half think it is suicide. Bradford stands at the front of the room and waits for silence. When the room finally quiets, he speaks. Gentlemen, current tactics have a success rate of 0.4%. That is not strategy. That is failure with a flight plan. The Bradford light changes the equation. 3 seconds of instant illumination. 0 warning time for the enemy. Attack window compressed from -15 seconds to +3 seconds. One of the pilots raises his hand. Flight Lieutenant Morrison, British exchange officer, 28 years old, 89 combat missions. Commander, with respect, we have been hunting U-boats since 1939. We do not need an American telling us how to fly. Bradford nods. You are right, Lieutenant. You do not need me telling you how to fly, but you do need me showing you how to illuminate. I will demonstrate tomorrow at 0600 hours. Any pilot who wants to observe is welcome. Morrison snorts but says nothing. At the back of the room, a young pilot sits alone taking notes. Lieutenant James Cortez, 22 years old, Mexican-American, 47 combat missions, 0 kills. His call sign is Ghost, because he never hits anything. After the briefing, Bradford approaches him. Lieutenant Cortez, may I see your logbook? Cortez hands it over without speaking. Bradford pages through the entries. 47 missions, 12 radar contacts, detailed notes about submarine behavior patterns, dive angles, reaction times. You have made more radar contacts than any other pilot in the squadron, Bradford says. Cortez's voice is quiet. And 0 kills, I know, sir. Because you are flying equipment that fails everyone. But your approach technique is flawless. How? Cortez pulls out a worn notebook. Inside are hand-drawn charts showing submarine captains' tactical patterns. I study them, sir. Each captain has a signature. Turn radius, reaction time, preferred escape vector. I have documented 37 different enemy commanders. Bradford stares at the notebook. This pilot has done exactly what Bradford himself did. Studied the problem, collected data, refused to accept failure as permanent. How would you like to fly the first combat mission with the Bradford light? Cortez looks up and Bradford sees something in his eyes. Hope, fear, the desperate need to prove he is not a failure. Sir, why me? I am the pilot everyone considers a joke. You are not a joke, Bradford says. You are the most prepared pilot I have seen, and preparation beats luck every time. They train for 3 days, night flights over the Pacific, practice attacks on friendly submarines. Cortez learns fast because he has already done the mathematics, already studied the problem, already spent 47 missions learning how to hunt an enemy he could not catch. Day 1, he activates the light too early, 800 yards. The submarine dives before he reaches attack range. Day 2, he activates too late, 20 yards. He overshoots the target. Day 3, perfect execution, 50 yards, 3 seconds. Direct hit on the practice target. Bradford watches from the tarmac as Cortez lands. The young pilot climbs down from the cockpit, and his hands are steady. You are ready, Bradford says. Tomorrow night, you hunt for real, July 5th, 1942, 2100 hours. Cortez takes off from North Island in a Catalina equipped with the Bradford light. His crew is Chen on radar and Petty Officer Dale Morgan as bombardier. The aircraft call sign is Ghost Rider. Fitting. They patrol west of Midway. The Pacific is empty and dark and vast. 3 hours pass with no contacts. Then at 22:47 hours, Chen's voice crackles over the intercom. Contact, bearing 075, range 18 miles, strong return, surface target moving 15 knots. Cortez throttles back, begins his descent. His hands shake on the controls because this is real now, not practice, not simulation. Real enemy submarine with real torpedoes that will kill real American sailors if he fails. Confirmed submarine, Cortez asks. Size and speed match IJ&I class, Chen replies. Confidence 95%. Good enough. Cortez flies the approach exactly as Bradford taught him. Slow descent, minimum engine noise, perfect intercept angle. At 2 miles, he can see nothing. Just darkness and the faint glow of stars on water. At 800 yards, still nothing. At 400 yards, Chen calls ranges over the intercom. 300, 200, 150. Cortez's finger hovers over the activation switch. Every instinct screams at him to flip it now to see what he is attacking, but he trusts Bradford's mathematics. 100 yards, 75, 50. Cortez flips the switch. The Pacific Ocean explodes into daylight, 22 million candle power turning midnight into noon. And there, frozen in perfect clarity, is the Japanese submarine I-168. Cortez can see everything. The hull number painted white on the conning tower. The deck crew scrambling. The officer diving for the hatch, his face turned upward toward the impossible light mouth, open in shock. The lookout is staring directly at the aircraft. His hand shields his eyes. His expression is pure terror. Cortez will remember that face for the rest of his life. Target acquired, Chen screams. Morgan releases the depth charges. 4 Mark 17 charges fall in perfect sequence, bracketing the submarine's pressure hull. 3 seconds later, Cortez kills the light. He banks hard right, climbing already turning for home. Behind them, the charges detonate simultaneously. The pressure hull cracks. The battery compartment explodes. I-168 breaks in half and sinks in 47 seconds. 82 Japanese sailors die. None of them survive long enough to reach the surface. Cortez levels the aircraft. His hands are shaking so violently he can barely hold the controls. Morgan's voice comes over the intercom, excited and young. Direct hit, target destroyed. But Cortez is not celebrating. He is thinking about the lookout's face, the terror in his eyes, the way his mouth opened to scream a warning that never came. 3 seconds of light. 82 men dead. Bradford is waiting on the tarmac when Ghost Rider lands at 03:40 hours. Cortez climbs down from the cockpit and salutes. How do you feel, Lieutenant? Cortez is quiet for a long time. Sir, I just killed 82 men in 3 seconds. How should I feel? Bradford's voice is gentle. Like you saved 800 Allied sailors who would have died when that submarine attacked the next convoy. You did your job, Jim, and you proved the system works. Cortez nods, but his eyes are haunted. That night, he does not sleep. He lies in his bunk and stares at the ceiling and sees the lookout's face over and over. The terror, the knowing, the 3 seconds between light and death. War is supposed to feel victorious. Instead, it feels like drowning. The kills accelerate. July 7th. Lieutenant Marcus Webb sinks I-159. Same approach. Same 3-second illumination. Same perfect mathematics, turning theory into wreckage. July 13th. Morrison, the skeptical British pilot, sinks U-751 in the Atlantic. He lands at base, walks directly to Bradford, and shakes his hand. "You were right, Commander. I was wrong." July 16th. U-335 destroyed in the Bay of Biscay. No survivors. August brings the Guadalcanal campaign. American Marines land on the island, and the Japanese submarine fleet responds with 23 boats ordered to blockade supply lines. Admiral Harrison assigns every Bradford Light-equipped aircraft to night patrol. What follows is a massacre. August 9th. Webb sinks I-123. August 12th. Cortez gets his second kill, I-174. The submarine is already diving when he activates the light, but Cortez has studied dive angles, knows exactly where the submarine will boot in 3 seconds. He drops charges on predicted position, direct hit at 40 feet depth. August 15th. Bradford personally leads a patrol with 3 aircraft. They coordinate like wolves hunting a pack. 3 submarines sunk in 90 minutes. I-9, sir, I-15, I-17. Japanese radio intercepts translate the enemy's new name for the Bradford Light, Hikari no Oni, the Demon of Light. By August 31st, the statistics tell a story that seems impossible. 12 submarines sunk in 1 month using the Bradford Light. The previous month's total for the entire Pacific Fleet was 2. The success rate jumps from 0.4% to 43%, a 100-fold increase. Japanese Submarine Command issues an emergency order. All boats will avoid surfacing at night in combat zones. The order is signed by Admiral Yamamoto himself. But daytime operations mean American fighters' radar-equipped destroyers' air patrols. The submarines are trapped now, surface at night and face the demon light, surface by day and face everything else. Losses triple. By September, Japanese submarine operations in the Southwest Pacific have effectively collapsed. One evening in late August, Whitmore appears at Bradford's office carrying 2 cups of coffee. He hands one to Bradford and sits down without being invited. "I owe you an apology, Commander," Whitmore says. "When you first showed me that jury-rigged spotlight in the hangar, I thought you were a reckless amateur. I was wrong." Bradford sips his coffee. "You were right to question me. If I had failed, I would have wasted resources during wartime. But you did not fail, and now the Navy wants to mass-produce Bradford Lights. 500 units by December. They want me to lead production." Bradford nods. "You should. You are the better engineer." Whitmore shakes his head. "I am the better engineer. You are the better innovator. There is a difference." He pauses. "Engineers optimize what exists. Innovators create what should not be possible. The Navy needs both. So what do you propose?" "I handle production. You handle the next impossible problem." Bradford looks up. "What problem?" "Kamikazes. Intelligence says Japan is developing suicide aircraft. Our current anti-aircraft systems cannot track them at night." Whitmore meets Bradford's eyes. "You solve submarines. Think you can solve this?" Bradford stares at his notebook. Then he picks up his pencil and starts sketching. "I can try." Whitmore stands to leave, then turns back. "Sam, I need to say something. When we first met, I saw you as a threat. Your success would have made my radar project seem inadequate. I let ego cloud my judgment. You were protecting your work. I was protecting my pride," Whitmore corrects. "There is a difference. You taught me that innovation requires humility, the willingness to admit when someone else has a better idea, even if they arrived at it through methods you do not approve." Bradford extends his hand. Whitmore shakes it. This time the grip is warm. "Thank you, Douglas." "No, Sam, thank you." After Whitmore leaves, Bradford sits alone with his calculations and his conscience. The numbers are undeniable. 23 submarines sunk in 6 weeks. Estimated 1,800 enemy sailors killed. Estimated 25,000 Allied personnel saved. But Bradford does not see statistics. He sees faces. The lookout on I-168 eyes wide with terror. The deck crew scrambling for hatches they will never reach. The officers dying in explosions they never saw coming. He opens his desk drawer and pulls out a photograph. Michael in his Navy dress whites, smiling at the camera, 23 years old and convinced he is immortal. Bradford built the light to prevent more families from receiving telegrams like the one his mother opened with shaking hands. But now he has created 1,800 telegrams for Japanese families, 1,800 mothers crying, 1,800 empty chairs at dinner tables. The mathematics prove he did the right thing. So why does his conscience insist he did something terrible? Chen visits that evening. He is a lieutenant now, a combat ace with 7 confirmed kills. Admiral, the men are celebrating. Production just hit 800 Bradford lights. Every Catalina and Wellington in both theaters will be equipped by September. Bradford nods. That is good news, Bobby. Chen sits down uninvited. His young face is serious beyond his years. Sir, you do not seem happy. I am happy. I am also tired. You created something that is saving tens of thousands of lives. I also created something that has killed thousands of enemy sailors. Young men, Bobby. Some probably 19 like you were when we first met. They had families, dreams, futures. I took that from them. Chen is quiet for a moment. When he speaks, his voice carries unexpected wisdom. Admiral, my father immigrated from China in 1920. He told me something I have never forgotten. In war, the great tragedy is not that bad men do evil things, but that good men must do terrible things to stop them. You are a good man who did terrible things for the right reasons. History will remember the lives you saved, not the enemy you killed. Bradford wants to believe this. He tries to believe this. But when he closes his eyes, he sees the lookout's face from that first attack. The terror, the knowing, the 3 seconds between light and death. He will see that face for the rest of his life. Outside, the sun sets over the Pacific. Somewhere in the darkness, submarines are surfacing to recharge batteries. But tonight they surface with fear. Tonight they know that darkness is no longer protection. Tonight the demon light is hunting, and the mathematics are perfect. The rain comes sideways across the Cornish coast. May 20th, 1944. Bradford stands on the tarmac at RAF St. Eval, watching the Atlantic wind tear at the windsocks. He is 46 years old now, promoted to captain, and England feels like stepping into someone else's war. Air Vice Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding waits in the operations building. Bradford has read the man's file. Brilliant tactician, skeptical of American technology, lost 2 sons to U-boats in 1942. The meeting room smells like wet wool and cigarette smoke. Dowding sits behind a desk covered in combat reports and looks at Bradford with the expression of a man who has heard too many promises. Captain Bradford, we have been fighting U-boats for 5 years with limited success. You are telling me an American spotlight will solve our problem in 2 weeks. Bradford places a folder on the desk. Not an American spotlight, sir. A physics problem solver. May I show you the data? Dowding nods. Bradford opens the folder. Pacific Theater, August 1942 through April 1944. 47 Japanese submarines sunk using the Bradford light. Success rate increased from 0.4% to 43%. Estimated 60,000 Allied lives saved. Dowding studies the numbers. His finger traces down the casualty column. When he looks up, his eyes are harder than before. Impressive statistics, Captain. But the English Channel is not the Pacific. German U-boats operate in wolf packs. They coordinate attacks. They have deck guns that shoot back. Your 3-second illumination window might get our pilots killed instead of the enemy. Then we train them not to get killed, Bradford says. Give me your 12 best pilots in 2 weeks. If the Bradford light does not work in European conditions, I will personally recommend we abandon the program. Dowding is quiet for a long moment. Outside, rain hammers against the window. You have 1 week. D-Day launches June 6th. We need every advantage we can get. 1 week is enough, sir. I hope you are right, Captain. Because if you are wrong, a lot of good men will die on those beaches. The RAF pilots are not impressed. 12 men sit in the briefing room at 0800 hours on May 21st. Average age 24. All combat veterans. All survivors of a war that has killed most of their friends. They look at Bradford with the polite contempt that the British reserve for Americans who think they know better. Squadron leader Jeffrey Morrison speaks for the group. 28 years old, 89 combat missions. 2 confirmed U-boat kills. With respect, Captain, we have been hunting U-boats since 1939. We do not need a Yank telling us how to do our jobs. Bradford nods. You are right, Squadron Leader. You do not need me telling you how to fly, but you do need me showing you how to illuminate. I will demonstrate this afternoon. Those who want to observe are welcome. Morrison lights a cigarette and says nothing. At 1400 hours, Bradford takes off in a Wellington bomber with Morrison as observer. The demonstration target is HMS Torbay, a friendly submarine running on the surface 2 miles offshore. Bradford flies the standard approach. Throttle back, descend to 100 feet, line up on the radar bearing. Morrison sits in the observer seat and watches with the expression of someone humoring a fool. At 50 yards, Bradford activates the light. The ocean becomes a photograph. HMS Torbay, frozen in perfect detail. Morrison can see the captain standing on the conning tower, can see the lookout's face, can count the rivets on the pressure hull. 3 seconds later, darkness returns. Morrison sits in silence for a full minute. Then he speaks, and his voice has changed. Bloody hell. I could see the captain's face through the periscope. Now imagine he is your enemy and you have 4 depth charges in the bomb bay. Morrison stares out the window at the empty ocean. When can we start training? They train for 6 days. 12 pilots flying 60 simulated attacks against British submarines who know exactly when and where the attacks are coming. Even with that advantage, the failure rate drops from 70% on day 1 to 5% on day 6. Morrison becomes Bradford's advocate. On the morning of May 27th, he addresses the other pilots. Gentlemen, the captain's device works. Our job is to prove we are good enough to use it. That evening, Eisenhower announces D-Day will launch June 6th at 0630 hours. Intelligence confirms 17 German U-boats positioned in the English Channel to attack the landing craft. Dowding summons Bradford to his office. Captain, tomorrow night those U-boats will be hunting our boys. I need you to hunt the U-boats first. We will be ready, sir. I hope so, because if even one landing craft gets torpedoed, it will be 200 soldiers drowning in the channel. I cannot allow that. Bradford understands what Dowding is not saying. The old man has already lost 2 sons of submarines. He will not lose 200 more soldiers if there is any way to prevent it. We will not let you down, sir. Dowding nods, but his eyes say he has heard that promise before. June 5th, 1944, 2000 hours. The briefing room is packed. 12 crews, 36 men. Every one of them knows what tomorrow means. The largest amphibious invasion in history. 150,000 Allied soldiers crossing the Channel to storm Hitler's fortress Europe. And between those soldiers and their objective, 17 German submarines wait in the darkness. Dowding stands at the front of the room. His voice is steady, but Bradford can hear the strain beneath it. Gentlemen, tomorrow morning our boys will land on those beaches. If U-boats sink the landing craft, those men drown before they can fight. You are their only protection tonight. Good hunting. The pilots file out to their aircraft. Bradford walks beside Morrison. How are your boys? Scared, determined, ready. Morrison pauses. You flying tonight, sir? Lead aircraft. You are 46 years old, Captain. You have trained us. Let us do the work. Bradford shakes his head. This is the most important mission of the war, Jeffrey. I am not sending anyone where I would not go myself. Morrison nods. Then I will see you in the air, sir. They take off at 2100 hours. 12 aircraft climbing into the darkness over the channel. Bradford flies north toward Cherbourg. The radar operator calls ranges as they close on the first patrol zone. At 2130 hours, Chen's voice crackles over the intercom. Contact, bearing 045, range 14 miles, surface target moving 12 knots. Bradford begins his approach. Throttle back, descend through 2,000 feet. The channel below is invisible, just blackness dotted with the running lights of the invasion fleet assembling in the distance. At 50 yards, Bradford activates the light. U-2 764 appears like a photograph in a dark room. German sailors scrambling on deck. The conning tower gleaming wet. Wake spreading white behind the hull. Bradford's bombardier releases 4 depth charges. 3 seconds later, darkness returns. Behind them, U-764 breaks in half and sinks in 38 seconds. All 53 crew members die. None of them will report what killed them. Bradford banks west. 1 down, let us find the rest. Morrison makes contact at 22:17 hours. His target is U-621 running on the surface 8 miles north of the Channel Islands. Morrison flies the perfect approach. Everything by the book. At 50 yards, he activates the light, but U-621 is ready. The German deck gun crew has been manning their positions, scanning the sky, expecting attack. When the Bradford light erupts, they are already aiming. 20-millimeter flak tears through the night, tracking toward the source of the light. Morrison's right engine explodes. Metal screams. The aircraft lurches left, losing altitude, trailing fire. Morrison's bombardier screams over the intercom. "Sir, we need to abort." Morrison's voice is steady. "Not until we drop these charges." He holds course despite the flak, despite the failing engine, despite the aircraft trying to tear itself apart. The bombardier releases the depth charges. Direct hit. U-621 breaks apart in a fountain of white water. Morrison banks away, climbing on one engine. The aircraft shakes like it is coming apart. He makes it back to base and crash lands on the runway with sparks shooting from the collapsed landing gear. The crew walks away without injuries. That night, Morrison receives the Distinguished Flying Cross. He accepts it in the hospital tent while a medic treats his burns. The massacre continues through the night. 22:45 hours. U-953, sunk by Morrison's wingman. 23:01 hours. U-255, sunk by Bradford's second attack. 23:18 hours. Double kill. Two aircraft attacks simultaneously, catching U-382 and U-441 within sight of each other. Both submarines destroyed within 30 seconds. 23:47 hours. Chen, now piloting his own aircraft, gets his first kill as captain. U-471 sinks in the Bay of the Seine. 009 hours. U-275 damaged and unable to dive surfaces and surrenders to a British destroyer. 0047 hours. Bradford's third kill of the night. U-981 caught, recharging batteries, destroyed before the crew can man their deck gun. 118 hours. The final kill. U-223. The submarine commander tries to dive early, but the Bradford light catches him at 30 feet depth. The depth charges detonate directly above the pressure hull. The submarine implodes. By 0200 hours, it is over. 8 U-boats sunk in 5 hours. 1 captured. The remaining 8 German submarines receive orders to withdraw from the channel immediately. Bradford lands at 00340 hours. His hands shake as he climbs down from the cockpit. He has flown for 6 hours, made 3 attacks, killed approximately 160 German sailors. Doubting is waiting on the tarmac. His face is wet, and Bradford realizes the old man is crying. "Captain Bradford, you just saved 20,000 soldiers, possibly more." Bradford looks at the horizon where the invasion fleet is assembling. In 3 hours, those men will storm the beaches. Because of tonight, they will make it to shore. "We saved them, sir," Bradford says quietly. "Your pilots, not me." Doubting shakes his hand. "History will remember this night, Captain. And history will remember you." But Bradford is not thinking about history. He is thinking about 160 German sailors who will never go home, about 160 families who will receive telegrams in the coming weeks, about the mathematics that prove he did the right thing while his conscience insists he did something terrible. June 6, 1944. 6:30 hours. The sun rises over Normandy. Bradford stands on the cliffs in England and watches through binoculars as the landing craft approach the beaches. Thousands of them, carrying 150,000 soldiers into the teeth of Hitler's Atlantic Wall. No torpedoes strike, no submarines attack. The landing craft reach the beaches intact. Men die that day, thousands of them. But they die fighting on solid ground, not drowning in the channel. Bradford lowers his binoculars and walks back to base. He has not slept in 36 hours. He does not plan to sleep now. There is too much work, too many more submarines to hunt, too many more attacks to fly. The war continues for another 14 months. The Bradford light continues killing submarines with mathematical precision. By August 1944, 78 Axis submarines have been destroyed using the device. Combined Pacific and Atlantic theaters. The Allied shipping loss rate decreases 74% in Bradford light operational zones. In his private war diary, German Admiral Karl Donitz writes, "The introduction of searchlight aircraft has made night surface operations impossible. We are losing the Battle of the Atlantic." Bradford is promoted to Rear Admiral in July 1944. He is 46 years old, the youngest flag officer in the U.S. Navy. He receives the Navy Cross, the British Distinguished Service Order, and a personal commendation from Eisenhower. He accepts the medals in a ceremony attended by 200 officers and files them in a drawer where he never looks at them again. August 15, 1945. The war ends. Japan surrenders after atomic bombs destroy Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The final Bradford Light statistics are compiled in Class 7. 212 Axis submarines sunk, 1,847 Bradford Light-equipped aircraft deployed, estimated 94,000 Allied personnel saved. September 2, 1945. Aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Admiral Chester Nimitz personally awards Bradford the Distinguished Service Medal during the surrender ceremony. The medal presentation happens in front of 200 officers, 50 journalists, and newsreel cameras that will show the footage to millions of Americans. Nimitz reads the citation. Rear Admiral Samuel Bradford for extraordinary achievement in developing the Bradford Light Aerial Searchlight System, which directly contributed to the destruction of 212 enemy submarines and saved an estimated 94,000 Allied lives. The nation owes you an unpayable debt. Bradford stands at attention while Nimitz pins the medal to his chest. Then he does something that shocks everyone in attendance. He removes the medal and hands it back. Admiral, with respect, the nation owes a debt to 1,847 pilots who flew those missions, to submarine crews who fought bravely even as they lost, to engineers like Commander Whitmore who turned a jury-rigged spotlight into a weapon system. I just had an idea. They executed it. Nimitz stares at him. Admiral Bradford, you cannot refuse a medal. Then give it to Lieutenant James Cortez, sir. He trusted an unproven device on the first combat mission. Give it to Squadron Leader Jeffrey Morrison, who flew with the failing engine to complete his attack. Give it to Ensign Bobby Chen, who believed in the project when everyone said it was impossible. They are the heroes. I am just the mechanic. The room is silent. Journalists scribble furiously. Photographers capture the moment. Tomorrow, newspaper headlines will read, Admiral refuses medal honors crew instead. Bradford becomes a national story. His humility is seen as the ultimate patriotism. Publishers offer $50,000 for his memoir. He declines. He retires from the Navy in 1946 at age 48, returns to San Diego, works as a civilian aircraft mechanic at a small airfield where nobody knows his name or his history. The years pass quietly. Bradford lives alone in a modest apartment, walks to work each morning, spends his evenings reading technical manuals and sketching improvements to aircraft engines that will never be built. When the Korean War begins in 1952, the Navy asks him to return and adapt the Bradford Light for helicopter operations. Bradford writes back, I designed it to stop one war. That was enough. In 1953, a young engineer fresh out of WWII visits Bradford's workshop. The kid is 23, enthusiastic, full of ideas about jet propulsion and guided missiles. He asks Bradford about his war service. Bradford shows him a photograph. Michael in his Navy dress white, smiling at the camera. This is my brother Michael, Bradford says. He died at Pearl Harbor. I built the Bradford Light so fewer people would receive telegrams like the one my mother got. That is the only war story that matters. The young engineer nods, understanding that some wounds never fully heal. In 1954, a Navy historian interviews Bradford for 6 hours, recording his memories of Project Midnight Sun. Bradford speaks in technical terms, avoiding drama, focusing on mathematics and engineering challenges. When the historian asks about the emotional toll, Bradford is quiet for a long time. I killed 6,200 men, Bradford finally says. I saved 94,000. The mathematics are clear, but mathematics do not care about faces. I remember faces. The historian asks what he means. The lookout on I-168, the first submarine Cortez destroyed. I saw the photograph from the mission report. Young kid, maybe 20 years old. Terror in his eyes, 3 seconds between light and death. Bradford pauses. I carry that face with me, and 5,000 others like it. The official history published in 1956 gives Bradford one paragraph. The pilots received 6 chapters, exactly as Bradford requested. In 1960, Bradford is diagnosed with lung cancer. Asbestos exposure from decades of aircraft maintenance. The doctors give him 2 years, maybe 3 if he is lucky. Bradford uses the time methodically the same way he approached every problem in his life. He makes a list of 847 sailors whose lives were saved by the Bradford Light. Their names ranks home addresses. Then he writes letters. Personal letters handwritten, explaining how each man survived because of mathematics and 3 seconds of light, and a squadron of pilots brave enough to fly into darkness with an untested weapon. The letters take him 18 months to complete. His hands shake from the chemotherapy, his vision blurs, but he writes every single one. Some families respond with gratitude. Others never reply. One widow writes back, "My husband came home because of you. Our 3 children grew up with a father because of you. Thank you will never be enough, but thank you." Bradford saves that letter. In late 1963, Cortez visits. He drives down from Arizona, where he has been living in retirement with his wife Maria and their grown children. Bradford is in hospice now. The cancer has spread to his bones, his liver, his brain. He can barely speak. But when Cortez walks in carrying a photograph, Bradford's eyes focus. The photograph shows Cortez's family, Maria beautiful and smiling. 3 children, now adults with families of their own. 6 grandchildren ranging in age from 2 to 15. "Admiral, I brought you something," Cortez says. His voice breaks. "Because of you, all of these people exist. My wife, my kids, my grandkids. They are alive because you gave me a weapon that worked. I survived the war because of your light." Cortez sits beside the bed. "Sir, you did not just save 94,000 faceless statistics. You saved people. You saved me. And I spent 20 years making sure your sacrifice mattered. I became a flight instructor, trained 217 pilots, told every single one of them about the night of July 5th, 1942, when an illegal searchlight and 3 seconds of courage changed my life." Bradford's lips move. Cortez leans close to hear. "Just a better flashlight," Bradford whispers. Cortez cries. Bradford dies 3 weeks later, August 12, 1964, age 66. His obituary in the San Diego Union runs 4 paragraphs, mostly about his administrative service in the 1950s. The Bradford Light gets 1 sentence, also known for developing aerial searchlight technology during World War II. No mention of the 94,000 lives saved. No mention of the submarines destroyed. No mention of the fisherman's spotlight and the 3 seconds that changed history. Exactly as Bradford would have wanted. 18 years later, the Naval Museum in San Diego unveils an exhibition. Bradford Light, the weapon that won the Atlantic. The centerpiece is the original prototype. The jury-rigged searchlight Bradford built in Hangar 3 in 1942. Salvaged batteries, hand-soldered connections, a housing held together with wire and hope. The plaque reads, "Built in violation of regulations, saved 94,000 lives." 400 people attend the dedication ceremony on a sunny September morning in 1982. Surviving pilots, now elderly men with canes and wheelchairs, submarine historians, naval officers, Bradford's 2 nephews, the only surviving family, and Cortez, now 62 years old, wearing his dress uniform with 7 campaign ribbons and a chest full of medals he never talks about. The museum director invites Cortez to speak. He walks slowly to the podium, his limp a reminder of a crash landing in 1943 that nearly killed him. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Captain James Cortez, U.S. Navy retired. In July 1942, I was a 22-year-old pilot with 47 missions and 0 kills. My fellow pilots called me Ghost because I never hit anything." The crowd is silent. Then Admiral Bradford chose me to fly the first combat mission with his illegal searchlight. I asked him why. Why choose the pilot everyone considered a failure? Cortez pauses, his voice strengthening. He told me, "Because you are not a failure. You are the most prepared pilot I have seen. And preparation beats luck every time." That night I sank a Japanese submarine. 3 seconds of light and 82 enemy sailors died. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt sick. I had killed 82 men I had never met. Men who probably had families waiting for them, men who were just doing their jobs, like I was doing mine. Admiral Bradford found me after the mission. I asked him, how should I feel about killing 82 men in 3 seconds? Cortez's voice breaks. He said, like you saved 800 Allied sailors who would have died when that submarine attacked the next convoy. He holds up the family photograph. His wife Maria sits in the front row crying. Over the next 3 years, I flew 94 more missions with the Bradford Light. I sank 7 submarines. I saved an estimated 4,000 Allied lives. But Admiral Bradford saved more than just military personnel. He saved families, futures, possibilities. My wife Maria would not exist in my life. I met her in 1946 after the war at a dance in San Diego. If I had died in combat, that meeting never happens. My children would not exist. My grandchildren would not exist. Cortez's voice rises. Multiply that by 94,000 saved lives. Every one of those men went home, got married, had children. Those children had children. Admiral Bradford's invention did not just change the war. It changed the entire future. Hundreds of thousands of people are alive today because one stubborn officer refused to accept that a problem was impossible. The Admiral refused every medal, every honor, every attempt to celebrate him. He spent his last years writing 847 personal letters to families of saved sailors. 847 letters apologizing for not doing more. Cortez wipes his eyes. That was the kind of man he was. He took credit for nothing and responsibility for everything. He saw himself as a mechanic with a flashlight. History sees him as a hero who saved 94,000 lives. So today we finally give him what he always refused, recognition, not for his ego. He is gone, but for history. Because future generations need to know that sometimes the most important innovations come from people who break the rules for the right reasons. Cortez looks directly at the camera recording the ceremony. Admiral Bradford, wherever you are, we remember, and we are grateful. The applause lasts 5 minutes. Cortez stands at attention, saluting the prototype in its case. Later, after the ceremony ends and the crowd disperses, Maria joins Cortez at the exhibit. They stand together holding hands, looking at the searchlight that changed their lives. Do you think about that night? Maria asked quietly. The first attack. Every day, Cortez says, I see the lookout's face. The tear in his eyes. I killed 82 men that night. You saved thousands of others. I know. Bradford taught me that. The mathematics are clear, but mathematics do not care about faces. He pauses. I carry those 82 men with me. Bradford carried 6,000. I do not know how he bore that weight. Maria squeezes his hand. He bore it the same way you do, one day at a time, knowing that the alternative was worse. They leave the museum as the sun sets over San Diego Bay. The same bay where Bradford worked for 18 years after the war, anonymous and content-fixing civilian aircraft, and never mentioning that he once changed history. 6 months after the exhibition opens, a researcher discovers Bradford's personal notebook in the Navy archives. The leather cover is cracked, the pages is yellowed, but the handwriting is still clear. The final entry is dated at August 14th, 1945, the day before Japan surrendered. Tonight the war ends. Tomorrow I become obsolete. For 3 years I have been the man who built the light that killed submarines. But that is not who I want to be. I want to be the man who saved pilots, who gave young men like Jim Cortez a chance to come home, marry, have children, live full lives. I want to be the man who honored his brother Michael by making sure fewer families received death notifications. I want to be the man who proved that regulations exist to protect people, but when regulations kill people, they must be broken. But I do not want to be remembered as a hero. Heroes do not question their actions. Heroes do not lie awake calculating how many enemy sailors died by their hand. Heroes do not write apology letters to widows of pilots killed using equipment they designed. I am not a hero. I am an engineer who saw a problem, ignored everyone who said it was impossible, and solved it anyway. The real heroes are the 1,847 pilots who trusted my device enough to fly into darkness with it. The real heroes are commanders like Admiral Harrison, who lost a son but still chose to support an untested weapon from an unauthorized source. The real heroes are engineers like Douglas Whitmore, who swallowed their pride and made my amateur design production ready. The real heroes are the enemy's submarine crews who fought bravely even as they faced a weapon they could not counter. I am just the mechanic who gave them all a better flashlight. Tomorrow I retire. I will return to San Diego, work on civilian aircraft, and try to forget the 6,200 men I killed. But I will never forget the 94,000 I saved. That is enough legacy for one lifetime. The entry is signed in Samuel Bradford, August 14th, 1945. The museum director reads the notebook and immediately adds it to the exhibition. A glass case beside the prototype now displays the open notebook showing Bradford's final words. Visitors stand in silence reading the entry, understanding finally that heroes are not fearless. They are afraid, they doubt, they question, but they do what is necessary anyway. Over the next decade, more than 1 million people visit the Bradford Light exhibition. School groups, veterans, engineers, families whose grandfathers were saved by the searchlight and never knew it. They read Bradford's words. They see the prototype. They learn the lesson. Sometimes the answer to an impossible problem comes from someone the experts dismiss. Sometimes the right thing to do violates every regulation. Sometimes 3 seconds of light is enough to change the world. And sometimes the most important words in history are not yes, sir, or following orders. Sometimes they are, watch this.